Welcome to another edition of Secular Sports. I know it's been a while, but based on my look right now, I pretty much look like I'm hungover. Well, if I do, I actually just came back from Vegas. Didn't exactly get to party or gamble or get myself trashed by some hoary ladies, but I think that crappy shows like the ISSA Interclean Show can do more than enough of the same kind of damage. Well, the damage might be done over in Cincinnati as the Bengals lost 13-9 to the Houston Texans 2 nights ago. Houston had just come off an embarrassing loss 29-7 to the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that was a 3-win team last year under two head coaches, Gus Bradley and Doug Marrone, and prior to the game, they were pretty much walking half empty on offense. The majority of their competent offensive linemen have either been ailing or been incompetent, and their best offensive lineman, left tackle Dwayne Brown, has still not showed up due to a contract dispute. And not only that, they also had no tight ends available. Even worked out Gary Barnes and still didn't care to sign him. And they practically just had one wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. Braxton Miller has pretty much been an afterthought ever since he entered his second year into the league. He hasn't really gotten much done on the field as he's still trying to fully transition into a position that he's only had really 1 year of playing wide receiver at his final year at Ohio State. And when you have three running backs and you just have really one competent wide receiver and practically no offensive line, you'd think that you would lose to the Bengals, but it wasn't exactly a pummeling the way that you would expect. DeShaun Watson had came off of a 60.4 passer rating as a substitute for starter Tom Savage in the second half against Jacksonville. Cincinnati was pretty much down throughout the game and looked like it was catching up, but with overthrows by Andy Dalton, bad protection, and pretty much no success with the running game, they ultimately not only lost 13-9, but are the first team to go 0-2 with no touchdowns scored since the 1939 Philadelphia Eagles. And frankly, now I think that the end of Marvin must come, because this was a game that the team should have won, considering that it was so loaded and it was at home. It was at home, and teams at home on Thursday Night Football usually win, especially if they are competent enough to win. The team only lost 0-20 to the Baltimore Ravens, a team that's technically better, but not by much in comparison to the Houston Texans. But the fact that the road team has a difficult time preparing and winning on Thursday night, this 13-9 loss is unacceptable considering what has been expected out of Marvin Lewis and considering what this team used to be. The team at one point in a year like 2013 was considered to be a Super Bowl contender, and the team even had Super Bowl aspirations, particularly in a year like 2015. Right now, the team looks already idiotic considering that it is not starting Joe Mixon at running back, considering that Jeremy Hill is pretty much done, like a lot of running backs when they have a lot of tread on their tires. And with the fact that Marvin Lewis has had no playoff victories, maligning characters of guys who apparently turned the corner, like Adam Jones, formerly known as Pac-Man, with his altercation in the offseason, resulting him getting a 1-game suspension. Vontaze Burfict getting a 3-game suspension for an illegal hit on Kansas City Chiefs fullback Anthony Sherman. It's looking pretty clear that Marvin doesn't really have that great of control of the locker room, and that his so-called touch, that is if he ever had it, is kind of wearing off. In my opinion, he didn't have the kind of touch that the media, portrayed him to having, because he was portrayed as a guy with this turnaround story because the Bengals were bad for so long, and the fact that they went from 2-14 in 2002 to 8-8 in back-to-back years in 2003 and 2004, and a playoff team in 2005. The media made Marvin a more colossal figure than what he actually was. The man is the leader of character problems, considering that 8 of his players were arrested in 2006, including players like Odell Thurman and A.J. Nicholson, along with the late Chris Henry. You also had past years like 2008, where Chad Johnson was holding out and acting like a drama queen, a baby, and according to Charlie Casserly, when he was working for the NFL Today on CBS at the time, came in underweight in comparison to what he had in comparison to his normal weight back in 2007. He got into that whole Ocho Cinco nonsense and practically threw his career away, except for a year like 2009. But when Marvin wanted him and Terrell Owens to team up together, and those two went down while Carson Palmer had 2 good performances in their absences in late in the 2010 season, especially when they went 4-12. He probably threw them under the bus. He pretty much, gave ammunition to the media to make it as if it was all their fault rather than his, considering that it's his responsibility to get the players on the same page. But in reality, he's not a great coach. He doesn't know how to make the expectations set, and every time the team thinks that it's a Super Bowl contender, it ultimately self-destructs. I mentioned 2015. It was probably the last decent year that they had, and after that playoff loss to Pittsburgh, where the team self-destructed, Adam Jones went on that Instagram tirade, justifiably because of Joey Porter, an assistant coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, violating rules. Because of problems like that, it didn't look as if the team was gonna have anything positive down the road. It was gonna lose Hugh Jackson to the Cleveland Browns head coaching position. It also did not do. It also failed to do certain transactions that I'll bring up later, and frankly, it doesn't know how to say that. Hey, we have a lot of work to do, and Marvin, with no playoff wins, is not the kind of coach you can ascend with. You can't, and frankly, he's had really good assistants on his staff, like Hugh Jackson and Mike Zimmer, and Paul Gunther is pretty good too. And if you let bad behavior fester around and throw Chad Johnson, Terrell Owens under the bus, you're not exactly a good leader. You're not, and the lack of playoff victories is not it's not boding well for you either. And another bad sign of leadership on his part comes from the day after the loss, which was the firing of Ken Zampese, the offensive coordinator. Zampese obviously has led an offense that had no touchdowns in the first 2 games, and both of them being losses. The first time this has happened since the 1939 Philadelphia Eagles did it, which happened to be led by quarterback Davey O'Brien, whom the College Quarterback Award is named after. Well, the fact that they're firing the offensive coordinator, it usually leads to a coaching staff blow up at the end of the year. It usually leads to losses and firings. Cases in point: Dennis Green in 2006, the Miami Dolphins in 2015, and even the Philadelphia Eagles got rid of some significant assistants like defensive coordinator Juan Castillo, and then ultimately got rid of their defensive line coach Jim Washburn. When you have all these premature and early firings and the team is playing pretty badly, it usually doesn't end up in a great result at the end of the year, and the coach does not stay on forever. And the worst part about this Zampese firing is that it's not going to get better under offensive coordinator Bill Lazor. He's had his clashes with quarterbacks like Nick Foles and Ryan Tannehill before, based on reports from the Philadelphia Inquirer's Jeff McLean and Jeff Darlington, who was reported for the Miami Herald, NFL Network, and ESPN. Well, Tannehill has at least turned his career around based off of his 2016 performance. Unfortunately, Foles has lost his way, and will have to find his way back to show that Laser is a problem. But then again, you could always look at Laser's resume, because there has never been a sustained pattern of success in comparison to a coach like Hugh Jackson, 2008 to 2009 in Seattle. The problems in Miami, and the fact that Andy Dalton has gone from a 100 plus quarterback rating quarterback to a 90 pass rating quarterback to now a 47 pass rating quarterback. It's not looking very good, considering that Dalton has actually had far worse losses in the past. Like 2014, he lost AJ Green for 3 games, and at one point only had Jermaine Gresham as a receiver in a playoff game versus the Indianapolis Colts. He only had one regular weapon to throw to that time, and now he is performing half as bad as we think he is based off of his passer ratings before Hugh Jackson came on, and after not only Hugh Jackson left, but with Zampese and Laser as his coaches. Well, you can maybe have this hope that it could turn around. You could maybe have this hope that Laser could bring in some of his own tricks and his own play designs to create something great for Dalton. But the team has been hamstrung by some bad personnel moves on general manager Duke Tobin's part. He never properly replaced Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones. And the draft pick of Tyler Boyd is looking like it's biting him in the ass, considering his reported problems with his coaches and the fact that he was inactive due to a coach decision this past week. Even though Brandon LaFell had a very underrated year, very quiet, a quiet 60-plus catch, 800-yard season in 2016 on a 60% catching rate, by the way. 64 balls for 864 yards on a 59.8% catching percentage rate. It's pretty good. It's actually not all that bad. It's better than what Sanu could do. Well, when there's nobody better than a guy like LaFell, and there are no proper pass rushing complements to Geno Atkins or Carlos Dunlap, and they've relied on a disappointing Cedric Abui to take over at left tackle, with Jake Fisher taking over at the right side, considering that Andrew Whitworth was too irreplaceable, and there has been no decision. There was no decision to have a tight end to possibly replace Tyler Eifert in case Tyler Eifert went down, considering his injury history. A lot of good tight ends passed him in the draft, like Gerald Everett, O.J. Howard, Evan Ingram. They let them all go, and they have left Marvin Lewis, Ken Zampese, and Bill Lazor with somewhat of a mess. They left Dalton with almost no one to play with, even though Dalton has not really proven us that he deserves any sympathy based on his overthrows aimed in Green's direction and LaFell's direction on Thursday night. When you look at the fact that they're gonna go to Green Bay in week 3, in week 3 and take them on the road, and considering that Green Bay looks like it's destined to at least go to the NFC divisional round, the Bengals having an 0-3 start will actually be no surprise. Based on these early season implosions and the scoring failures of this team, you pretty much have to lose faith. You have to lose faith. At this pace right now, the team is looking like it will lose at least one game to Cleveland this upcoming season. I mean, the defense might be able to match up to the offensive line, or maybe even wide receiver Corey Coleman as he's possibly trying to show what he can do as a healthy player. But when you lose to the Texans, who are so depleted, and Cleveland was able to shut down Pittsburgh to a 21-point total with Martavis Bryant back, Le'Veon Bell back, and Antonio Brown still being his true self, the Bengals are probably going to make the Browns look like a 4-6 win team, while the Bengals, a 6-9-1 team in 2015, with a worse offensive side of the ball right now. The Cincinnati Bengals look like they're going in that direction. When this is extremely likely, and when there has been absolutely no success that has warranted Marvin Lewis to stay on for long, the beginning of the end must take place right now. There's no point in rooting for the team. There's no point in having any faith in them. And frankly, I'm not even sure if putting Joe Mixon in the lineup and having him start will do any favors for this team. It's pretty much over. 0-3 is already difficult to overcome, and becoming 1-2 against Aaron Rodgers is possibly as difficult. Go ahead and write this team off. It's done, and it's not worth our time. And the worst part of all is that there's still a chance that Marvin Lewis still can be asked to come back, considering what happened in 2010 and 2008, as he had 8 total losses in 2 of those different years.